When Big Shaq meets Jaden Carter, a talented but troubled teen athlete, he sees more than just a kid struggling on the court. He sees someone running from something. As Shaq digs deeper, he discovers Jaden's mother has vanished, and dangerous men are hunting him. But why? And what secret is Jaden too afraid to reveal? What starts as mentorship turns into a deadly fight for survival? Shaq must protect Jaden before time runs out, because if he fails, the kid's future won't just be lost, it'll be erased. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. The sound of sneakers squeaking against the polished wooden floor echoed through the empty gym. The scoreboard above flickered in the dim light, long past the hours when practice had ended. Big Shaq stood near the entrance, arms crossed, watching. On the court, Jaden Carter moved like a ghost. Silent, fast, relentless. The 16-year-old had talent, raw and electric. His crossover was sharp, his footwork controlled, his shot deadly. But something was off. Shaq had trained plenty of young athletes in his time, but this wasn't normal dedication. This was desperation. Sweat dripped from Jaden's brow, his breathing heavy, his movements precise but forced. The kid had been going at it for hours, long after the rest of the team had left. Shaq had noticed the pattern. Jaden never left with the other players. He always stayed behind. Shaq stepped onto the court. "That's enough for tonight, kid." Jaden froze mid-dribble. His shoulders stiffened, and for a split second, Shaq saw it, fear. Then, just as quickly, Jaden forced a smirk, masking whatever had flashed across his face. "I'm good, coach. Just a few more shots." Shaq narrowed his eyes. He wasn't buying it. "Nah. You've been out here for 3 hours straight." He motioned toward the bench. "Sit." Jaden hesitated, then sighed and sat, bouncing the ball between his legs. His body screamed exhaustion, but his hands never stopped moving. Like stopping was the real problem. Shaq watched, studied him. The kid's movements were too twitchy, his eyes darting toward the gym doors every few seconds, like he was expecting something. Or someone. Shaq leaned forward. "You've been pushing yourself harder than anyone on the team. You trying to impress scouts?" Jaden forced a laugh. "Something like that." Shaq wasn't convinced. "You in trouble?" Jaden's hands instantly stopped moving. A beat of silence. Then a shake of the head, too quick, too forced. "Number, I'm good." Shaq studied him. The slight flinch at his question. The way his fingers clenched the ball a little too tightly. The bruises on his arms that didn't come from basketball. Shaq had seen these signs before, in kids trying to hide something bigger than the game. The next day, Shaq lingered near the locker room, keeping an ear out for the players' usual post-practice trash talk. Instead, he caught a different kind of conversation. "Yo, you see Jaden's arms today? Looked like someone threw him through a wall. Man, that dude never talks about his home life. No one's even met his family. I heard he sleeps at the gym sometimes." Shaq's stomach tightened. He didn't jump to conclusions easily, but his instincts were screaming. That night, long after the gym had closed, Shaq sat in his office, going over player reports. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. "Yeah?" Silence. Then, a voice. Shaky. Small. Barely above a whisper. "Coach?" Shaq sat up. "Jaden." But before he could respond, the line went dead. A chill ran down Shaq's spine. Something was wrong, and he wasn't about to ignore it. The next evening, Shaq watched from the sidelines as Jaden pushed himself harder than ever. Drills, layups, defensive slides. He was relentless. Even the other players were starting to notice. "Man, does he ever stop?" one of them muttered, shaking his head as Jaden launched another three-pointer. Shaq wasn't impressed. He was concerned. After practice, as the gym emptied out, Shaq approached Jaden. "You ever heard of the law of diminishing returns?" Jaden wiped sweat from his forehead, breath still heavy. "That's supposed to be a basketball rule?" Shaq smirked. "Nah, it means the harder you push past exhaustion, the worse you get. Training smart is better than training hard." Jaden gave a small shrug. "Guess I like pushing limits." Shaq crossed his arms. "You're pushing something, all right. Just not sure it's basketball." Jaden froze for half a second, then forced a chuckle. I'm fine, coach. Liar. Shaq could see right through it. He decided to test the waters. You got people looking at you yet? Scouts? Jaden hesitated. Not really. Shaq raised an eyebrow. Not even college recruiters, with your talent? Jaden quickly tied his hoodie tighter around his body. I just need more time. Shaq frowned. Something wasn't adding up. Over the next few weeks, Shaq started paying closer attention. And the more he looked, the more he saw. Fresh bruises every few days. Some small, some deep. All of them ignored. He never let anyone walk him home. Always made up an excuse. Late-night texts. Shaq would see Jaden glance at his phone, his face shifting from tense to unreadable. Something wasn't right. Shaq had seen these patterns before, kids hiding something. And whatever Jaden was hiding, it wasn't small. One evening, Shaq was locking up the gym when Jaden's phone, left unattended on the bleachers, buzzed. Shaq wasn't the type to invade privacy, but when he glanced at the screen, his gut twisted. Where are you? Don't make me come looking. No name, no contact photo, just the kind of message that made your stomach drop. Jaden grabbed his phone a second later, shoving it into his pocket like it was burning a hole in his hand. Shaq kept his expression neutral. Everything good? Jaden's nod was too quick. Yeah, just a friend. Liar. That night, Shaq stayed behind, pretending to do paperwork as Jaden kept practicing. It wasn't long before it happened. One moment, Jaden was running a fast break. The next, his knees buckled, his body crumpling onto the hardwood. Shaq was on him in an instant. Jaden, you all right? Jaden tried to push himself up, but his arms gave out. Shaq didn't hesitate. He lifted the kid onto his feet. You're done. I'm taking you to a hospital. Instant panic. Jaden snapped awake, struggling against Shaq's grip. No hospital, I'm fine. His breathing was rapid, eyes wild. Please, coach, I just need to rest. Just don't take me there. Shaq tightened his grip. The fear in Jaden's voice wasn't normal. This wasn't just about exhaustion. This kid was scared of something bigger than basketball. And now? Shaq knew he had to find out what. The next morning, Shaq couldn't shake the feeling that Jaden's problems ran deeper than exhaustion. The panic in his voice, the bruises, the secrecy. It all pointed to something bigger. So, Shaq started asking questions. First, he checked in with Jaden's teammates. Man, Jaden's got skills, but I swear he's got another life we don't know about, one of them muttered. He never talks about his family, another added. Like, at all. Shaq nodded, absorbing the details. Something wasn't adding up. Next, he went to Jaden's teachers. The responses were all the same. Jaden's grades have slipped bad this year. A few months ago, he was an A student. Now, he barely shows up. He's been caught fighting. He never starts them, but when he gets pushed, he snaps. We called home multiple times, but no one answers. We don't even know who his guardian is. Shaq's jaw clenched. Jaden wasn't just struggling. He was spiraling. Finally, he tried the school counselor. She hesitated, then sighed. Coach, I'm worried about Jaden too, but I can't discuss student records. Shaq leaned in. I don't need records. I need to know if this kid is safe. A pause, then quietly. I don't think so. That was all Shaq needed to hear. That night, Shaq was locking up the gym when he noticed something unusual. His locker door was slightly open. Shaq frowned, reaching for the handle. Inside, there was a folded note, written in thick black marker. Stay out of this. You don't know what you're dealing with. Shaq's pulse pounded. Someone knew he was looking into Jaden, and they wanted him to stop. That wasn't going to happen. If Jaden wasn't going to tell him the truth, Shaq was going to find it himself. That night, he waited outside the gym, watching. Sure enough, Jaden slipped out through the back, moving fast. Shaq trailed him from a distance, his instincts sharp. Instead of heading home, Jaden turned down an alleyway, weaving through back streets. Then, he disappeared into an old, abandoned warehouse. Shaq stared. What the hell was he doing there? Shaq waited a few minutes, then moved toward the building. The door was cracked open. Inside, his stomach twisted. A dirty mattress, a pile of stolen food from convenience stores, a small beat-up duffel bag. Jaden was living here, alone. Shaq exhaled slowly, anger and sadness colliding in his chest. This kid wasn't just struggling, he was homeless. Jaden froze when he saw Shaq standing in the doorway. His face went pale. What are you doing here? His voice wasn't defensive. It was defeated. Shaq stepped inside, looking around. I should be asking you the same thing. Jaden swallowed hard. You need to leave, coach. Shaq folded his arms. Not happening. For the first time, Jaden's tough exterior cracked. His hands shook, his chest rose and fell too fast. Shaq took a slow breath. Talk to me, kid. A long silence. Then, barely above a whisper, I don't have a home. Shaq's chest tightened. How long? Jaden rubbed his face. Months. Why? Jaden's eyes darkened. He hesitated. Then, because I'm hiding. Shaq stared. Hiding from who? Jaden looked away. If they find me, I'm dead. Silence. Shaq's jaw clenched. This wasn't just a struggling kid. This was something much, much worse. Shaq sat across from Jaden on the worn-out mattress inside the abandoned warehouse. The kid looked exhausted, more than just physically. For a long time, Jaden said nothing. He just sat there staring at the ground, hands clenched into fists. Then finally, he broke. My mom. His voice was raw, like it hurt to speak. She's gone. Shaq's heart tightened. Gone? Jaden nodded. She disappeared 4 months ago, just vanished. Shaq stayed quiet, letting him talk at his own pace. She worked for this company, Langley Industries. I don't know what she did exactly, but I know she started acting weird, jumping at noises, looking over her shoulder, telling me to be careful. Jaden swallowed hard. Then one night she told me that if anything happened to her, I needed to run. Shaq's jaw clenched. Jaden let out a bitter laugh. I thought she was being paranoid, though she was stressed. I went to school the next day. When I came home, she was gone. Silence. Jaden's voice dropped. And someone else was in the apartment. Shaq felt a chill crawl up his spine. What happened? I ran. Jaden's hands trembled. Didn't take anything, didn't look back. Just ran. Shaq exhaled slowly. This was bigger than he thought. Have you tried going to the cops? Jaden gave him a dead look. You really think they're gonna help me? Shaq had no answer to that. That night, Shaq drove back to his gym, his head spinning. Everything about Jaden's story felt wrong. If his mom worked for some company, why would they want her gone? And more importantly, why were they after her son? Shaq pulled into the parking lot, stepped out of his car, and stopped cold. His gym door was wide open. The lock, broken. His gut tightened. Shaq immediately scanned the area. The parking lot was empty, the streetlights casting eerie shadows across the pavement. Everything was too quiet. He stepped inside. The place was wrecked, benches flipped, lockers open, papers scattered everywhere. But nothing was stolen. The computers were still there, the cash register untouched. Then, Shaq saw it. A single piece of paper taped to his office door. Walk away, or you're next. Shaq ripped the note off the door, his blood boiling. Someone had come here to send a message. They knew he was helping Jaden. They wanted him to stop. Too bad for them. Shaq wasn't backing down. Shaq wasn't the type to go to the cops. He knew how the world worked. People with power didn't get caught. So he went to the one guy who could find answers when no one else could. Reese Calloway. A former investigative journalist turned underground hacker, Reese had built a reputation for exposing the kind of secrets people killed for. Shaq met him at a small diner where Reese sat hunched over a laptop, his usual coffee in one hand, a half-eaten donut in the other. Reese looked up as Shaq slid into the booth. Well, if it isn't my favorite former NBA star turned neighborhood protector, what's got you playing detective? Shaq didn't waste time. I need information on a company called Langley Industries. Reese's eyebrows shot up. That's not just any company, man. That's Victor Langley's empire. You know, the billionaire with more government contracts than morals. Shaq leaned forward. Jaden's mom worked for him. Then she vanished. Now people are after the kid. Reese whistled low. That's bad. Tell me something I don't know. Reese started typing. Fast. A few moments later, he turned the laptop around. Langley Industries, defense, pharmaceuticals, bioengineering. Shaq frowned. Bioengineering? Reese nodded. Yeah, and not the legal kind. There are rumors this guy has been running off-the-books projects for years. Government black ops, illegal human testing, you name it. Shaq's stomach dropped. What the hell was Jaden's mom mixed up in? Reese kept typing. Hold up, I think I found her. He pulled up a company ID badge. Jaden's mom, Leah Carter. Status, terminated. Shaq's grip tightened on the table. Terminated, huh? Reese's voice was grim. Yeah, but something tells me that ain't just about her job. Shaq exhaled. If Langley had her killed, Jaden was next. And then, Reese's screen glitched. A warning flashed across the monitor. Unauthorized access detected. Your location has been logged. Shaq and Reese stared at each other. Reese slammed his laptop shut. We gotta move. Now. Shaq sped back to the warehouse where Jaden had been staying. But the moment he pulled up, his stomach dropped. The door was wide open. Inside, the place was trashed. The mattress flipped, the duffel bag gone, and on the wall, written in red spray paint, too late. Shaq's hands curled into fists. They had Jaden. And now, Shaq's knuckles were white as he gripped the steering wheel. His car sped down the dark highway, headlights cutting through the endless stretch of road. Jaden was out there, somewhere, taken. And Shaq was done playing defense. In the passenger seat, Reese's fingers flew over his laptop, hacking into Langley's security systems. His face was lit by the glow of his screen, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Got something, Reese muttered. Shaq's heart pounded. Where? Reese turned the laptop toward him. A GPS ping, blinking red, marked a location deep in an industrial district outside the city. A warehouse, Reese confirmed. Langley owns the property through a shell company. No official records of what goes on there. He looked up, which means bad news. Shaq's jaw clenched. Then we don't have time to waste. The warehouse loomed in the distance, a hulking steel structure surrounded by a chain-link fence. No lights, no signs of activity. But Shaq knew better. This place was a fortress. From a nearby rooftop, he scanned the area through binoculars. 4 armed guards patrolled the perimeter, another 2 at the front entrance, and likely more inside. He exhaled slowly. This was going to be messy. Reese's voice crackled in his earpiece. You sure about this? These guys aren't street thugs. They're professionals. Shaq smirked. So am I. Then he moved. Silent, efficient, deadly. First guard, down in 3 seconds. A swift chokehold from behind, and the body was dragged into the shadows. Second guard, disarmed, a single knockout punch to the temple. Third and fourth, taken out with quick, precise strikes. Within minutes, the perimeter was clear. Shaq reached the entrance, pressed himself against the steel door, and whispered into his mic. I'm in. The warehouse was cold and silent. The air smelled of oil, sweat, and something else, something foul. Shaq moved carefully, his boots barely making a sound against the concrete. The deeper he went, the worse it got. He turned a corner and stopped cold. There, in the middle of the room, Jaden, tied to a chair, his head slumped forward, bruised, bloody, barely conscious. Shaq's fists clenched. Then, a noise, a faint cough. Shaq's eyes flicked to the far side of the room. Another figure, a woman, handcuffed, weak, barely moving. Shaq's breath hitched. Leah Carter, Jaden's mother. She was alive. Shaq rushed forward, working fast to untie Jaden's restraints. His body jerked weakly, his swollen eyes barely opening. Coach? His voice was barely above a whisper. Yeah, kid. I got you. Jaden's head lolled to the side, toward the woman. Mom? Shaq turned to Leah, quickly unlocking her cuffs. She flinched at his touch, eyes wide, filled with fear. It's okay, Shaq reassured her. I'm here to get you both out. Leah blinked, her chapped lips trembling. You shouldn't be here, she rasped. He'll kill you. Shaq frowned. Who? Before she could answer, a slow clap echoed through the warehouse. Shaq turned sharply, his entire body tensing. A man stepped out of the shadows. Victor Langley. Langley smirked, adjusting the cuffs of his pristine suit. Behind him, 4 armed guards stood ready. You've been a real problem, Shaq. His voice was smooth, confident, like he had already won. Shaq stood his ground. Let them go. Langley chuckled. I don't think so. Then, he tilted his head toward Leah. You told him, didn't you? He sighed. That's disappointing. I had such high hopes for you. Shaq's stomach tightened. What the hell did you do to her? Langley's smirk widened. Leah was an accountant for my business. She stumbled onto some, let's call them side projects. She tried to do the right thing, tried to expose me. He shrugged. So I made her disappear. Shaq's fists clenched. And Jaden? Langley sighed, shaking his head. A loose end, a bargaining chip to flush her out. Shaq's blood boiled. This wasn't just about money or power. This was about control. And now? Langley thought he still had it. Shaq smiled darkly. You really don't know who you're messing with. Then, he moved. Before Langley could react, Shaq exploded forward. First guard, disarmed, elbow to the face, gun ripped from his hands. Second guard, throat strike, crumpling instantly. Third guard, gunshot fired, Shaq dodges, counters with a brutal takedown. Fourth guard, hesitates. Big mistake. One punch and he's out cold. Langley stumbled backward, his smirk finally gone. Shaq grabbed him by the collar, lifting him off the ground. You hurt that kid, Shaq growled. You threatened my family. Langley gasped for air. For the first time, he looked afraid. Shaq wanted to end him, but then, Jaden's weak voice. Coach. Shaq looked over. Jaden's eyes, pleading. Don't be like him. Shaq's grip loosened. Then, he threw Langley to the ground, hard. You're done, Shaq muttered. You just don't know it yet. As Shaq helped them outside, police sirens filled the air. Reese had done his job. The authorities were already moving in. Langley's empire was crumbling. Jaden leaned against Shaq, exhausted but alive. His mother clutched his hand, tears streaming down her face. Shaq looked at them both. You're safe now. For the first time in months, Jaden believed it. Shaq kept a firm grip on Jaden, guiding him toward the exit while Leah staggered beside them. She was weak, but she was alive. Outside, the night air hit them like a blast of cold reality. They weren't safe yet. The warehouse behind them still reeked of blood, sweat, and secrets. Reese's voice crackled through Shaq's earpiece. You need to move, now! Shaq scanned the lot, 2 black SUVs barreling toward them. His gut tightened. Langley wasn't done. The SUVs screeched to a stop. Doors flew open. Armed men poured out, their faces cold, their weapons locked and loaded. Then, last to step out, Victor Langley. Unshaken. Smug. In control. Langley adjusted his cufflinks, the flickering streetlight casting shadows across his face. Did you really think it would be that easy? Shaq positioned himself in front of Jaden and Leah, his muscles coiled like steel cables. You lost, Langley, Shaq growled. The cops are on their way, it's over. Langley chuckled, slow and deliberate. I have friends in high places, Shaq. His eyes gleamed with arrogance. Do you really think I can't make this all disappear? His goons cocked their weapons, 12 guns, 1 Shaq. Langley smirked. But I'll tell you what. I'll make you an offer. Walk away. Right now. And I let you live. Shaq clenched his fists. This bastard actually thought he could buy his way out. Langley gestured toward Jaden. Give me the boy. Give me my property. Jaden flinched, and something inside Shaq snapped. No more running. No more hiding. This ended tonight. Then, chaos. Shaq moved first. He ripped a gun from the nearest thug's hands, snapping his wrist like a twig before driving an elbow into his face. Another guard fired. Shaq ducked, rolled, disarmed him in one motion. The world became a storm of fists, gunfire and raw violence. Reese fired from the rooftop, covering them as Shaq fought his way toward Langley. 3 men down. 4. 5. Langley's men were well-trained, well-armed. But they weren't Shaq. The parking lot was a war zone. Langley stepped back, his arrogance slipping. His empire was falling apart. Shaq stalked toward him. "You want Jaden? Come take him yourself." Langley hesitated. For the first time, he looked afraid. He pulled a gun, aiming it at Jaden. Shaq lunged. The gun fired. Shaq tackled Langley to the ground. The bullet whizzed past Jaden's shoulder, missing by inches. Shaq pinned Langley, his fists smashing into his face, again and again. Langley's nose cracked, blood splattered. His screams turned to gurgles. Shaq pressed his forearm against Langley's throat. One move, that's all it would take. One move, and Langley would never hurt anyone again. The world narrowed. All Shaq saw was a monster beneath him. The man who took Jaden's mother. The man who hunted a child. The man who thought he was untouchable. And Shaq? Shaq could end it right now. Langley's swollen eyes widened in terror. "You don't have it in you," he rasped. Shaq's fingers curled tighter around his throat. Then, a voice. Not Langley's, not Reese's, Jaden's. "Coach." Shaq froze. Jaden stood nearby, his body battered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Don't be like him," Jaden said softly. "You're better than that." Shaq's pulse pounded in his ears. His grip on Langley tightened. And then, he let go. Langley gasped for air, coughing violently. Shaq leaned in close. "You don't deserve to walk away from this." Then he looked up, sirens in the distance. "You're done," Shaq muttered. "You just don't know it yet." The police stormed in. Langley's men tried to run, didn't get far. Reese stepped beside Shaq, smirking. "I told you backup was coming." Langley was hauled to his feet, his face bloody, his empire in ruins. Shaq watched as the billionaire was shoved into the back of a police car. For once, money couldn't buy his way out. Shaq turned to Jaden and Leah. They were safe. For the first time in months, Jaden wasn't running anymore. The kid looked at Shaq, his voice filled with gratitude. "You didn't have to do all this for me." Shaq smiled, ruffling Jaden's hair. "Yeah, I did. Because at the end of the day, some fights are worth it." 2 weeks had passed since Langley's arrest. The media called it a massive corporate scandal, the fall of a billionaire entangled in human trafficking, corruption, and government secrets. But for Shaq, it wasn't about the headlines. It was about the kid who almost didn't make it out alive. Jaden. Shaq sat in a dimly lit cafe, watching through the window as Leah Carter signed the last of the documents. Witness protection, a new life, new names, a chance to finally be safe. Reese had called in every favor he had left, and now Leah and Jaden were being relocated, far from Langley's reach. But that kind of fresh start came with a heavy price. They had to disappear. Jaden wouldn't be able to come back to the team. No more basketball, no more late-night practices, no more Shaq. Shaq clenched his jaw, staring at his reflection in the coffee's dark surface. It felt like losing a player, losing a brother. Then, the bell above the cafe door chimed. He looked up. Jaden stood there, hands stuffed into the pockets of his hoodie. "Coach." Shaq exhaled slowly, forcing a small smile. "What's up, kid?" The gym was empty. Just Shaq and Jaden. One last time. Jaden dribbled, his movements fluid, effortless. His bruises were fading, but the scars weren't just on his skin. Shaq passed him the ball. "Let's see what you got." Jaden squared up. Jump shot. Perfect form. The ball swished clean through the net. Shaq smirked. "Still got it." Jaden turned, his expression more serious now. "Coach," he hesitated. "I don't know how to say this." Shaq crossed his arms. "Try." Jaden exhaled. "If you hadn't been there, I wouldn't be here." Shaq felt the weight in those words. This wasn't just about basketball anymore. He had saved Jaden's life. But the truth was, Jaden had saved him too. Shaq pulled something out of his gym bag and tossed it to Jaden, a custom basketball jersey. Jaden caught it, unfolding the fabric. His eyes widened. The back read, Carter. Jaden ran his fingers over the name, his throat tightening. I know you won't be around, Shaq said, his voice rough, but you're still part of this team. Jaden swallowed hard. I don't know if I'll ever play again. Shaq stepped forward. You will. Jaden met his eyes. How do you know? Shaq smiled. Because you love the game too much to walk away. For a long moment, Jaden just stood there, gripping the jersey like it was the most valuable thing he'd ever owned. Then, he pulled Shaq into a tight hug. No words, just gratitude, respect, brotherhood. The black SUV idled outside the gym. Leah stood beside it, watching as Jaden shook hands with Shaq one last time. I'll miss you, coach. Shaq ruffled his hair. Stay out trouble, kid. Jaden grinned. No promises. The moment felt final. As the SUV pulled away, Shaq stood there, watching until the taillights disappeared down the road. And then, silence. Shaq ran a hand over his face, exhaling slowly. It was over. But deep down, he knew the truth. For every Jaden, there was another kid out there. Another kid who needed someone to fight for them. Shaq turned back toward the gym, his purpose clearer than ever. This fight, it wasn't over. Not even close. Jaden got his second chance, but how many others won't? The truth is, for every kid like Jaden, there's another trapped in a battle they can't fight alone. And in a world where power silences the innocent, sometimes it takes one person willing to stand up and say, not today. What would you do if faced with the same choice? Walk away or fight back? If this story gripped you, get ready, because the game isn't over. Would you step up for the next Jaden? Stay tuned, because some fights are just getting started.